Chat. Chat, hello, hello. Everyone, here we go.
X-Men for Boss. Lăn sạch khô thoáng, tỏa sáng đúng chất.
Everyone, here we go.
X-Men for Boss. Lăn sạch khô thoáng, tỏa sáng đúng chất.
Plastic side eye. Fuck yeah. Nhạc ác nhạc chủ tịch rồi. Sorry. Okay, sorry chat, sorry. I am so goddamn sorry chat. Ever in my memory, no empty space in gần ra mãi rồi cũng chán thôi. Mẹ kim à? À không. Suýt thì tưởng mẹ kim. Và Mao. Empty space in your room. Hồi xưa toàn coi phim Disney như chẳng biết anime là gì. Thực tế em vẫn xem Naruto đây. Thực tế thì vẫn xem Naruto mặc dù vẫn nói câu đấy. Vào HTV3 Yu-Gi-Oh. Ngày xưa có xem Yu-Gi-Oh trên HTV2. Vua chó đùa. Hello and hey. Đợi chút. Tôi cũng đang ngồi xem review cái này. Tôi đang ngồi xem review cái này, god damn it. Vì là một đứa không tập trung, em toàn nhảy kênh liên tục để tìm cái đó hay. ADHD. Nên lắm được vài lần. I see. Let's go bunny suit. Yeah, I like bunny suit too, man. I really love them. Tôi rất là thích bunny suit. Get it down tight. Okay, H13 going down here. Yeah, chắc về sau anh sẽ copy kiểu review của ông này đó quá. Nó đơn giản, nó dễ edit. Kind of sit on it. Tiếng review có bé quá không chat? Tiếng review có bé quá không? Đọc mười mày không? Không ai hỏi cả. Không ai nào. Vì
But if you want to get more out of it, you can use this included stand, which you'll need to use this whole detail that goes in the ass, so you can then stick the stand into it, and therefore don't have to use the awful stand. If you don't want to use a stand at all, you also have a curly tail. Only problem is, these tails get dirty very easily, not from sticking it into the ass, but because of
alright.
fuzzy material. Thankfully, it also
Ready for what we got?
Overall, this figure looks great, includes improvements over previous releases, so I can definitely recommend it if you like how it looked and don't mind the price. Unfortunately, it's out of stock at Gundam It, but you can pre-order other snail shell figures there, like the succubus I talked about earlier. If you've never used Gundam It, I've used them a lot. They've been pretty great. Of course, don't forget to enter in my code in the support your favorite reviewer thing. There is no meme. It just really helps out. That's about it for BIDV patrons. I heard that one of them is a fucking dumbass, and it's definitely this one. Of course, they do full-time reviews for their recording contributions, and I'll see y'all next time. To watch as well. Well, the biggest part of it is that while it isn't beyond me to do that, I just don't think it's funny. Oh, it's a hero. Is that a fucking Gundam reference? There, I did it. You happy I validated you? You might not be because I intentionally said hero instead of haro to annoy people. Anyway, you can tab this into this, which attaches to that. Did I mention this is based on the movie? The famous movie scene with the flying cabbage things. I'm sorry, that's a spoiler, isn't it? Please have it in your heart to forgive such a slight on my part, since that definitely happened in the movie. Of course it did, because if it didn't, it wouldn't be in this movie-inspired figure, right? The fact that this is based on the movie isn't some kind of contrived, arbitrary marketing thing, right? I don't know why this bothers me. Figma stand.
Hello everyone. Today I will introduce how to use Shaker AI for game asset design, helping you create a unique game.
The dream of every sub-girl, Mazinger. I don't have all the Konosuba Figmas, but I do have Aqua and Kazuma. Overall, it's one of the best of the Konosuba Figmas I've gotten, so if you want something like this, and don't mind the price of more recent Figmas, I can definitely recommend it. Otherwise, no. So this channel is called Zero Goken, and yet I haven't reviewed a Goken. I'm also wearing a JoJo mask, yet I haven't reviewed anything JoJo related either.
Oh, seriously, like.
In case you got a minor stroke in the last few seconds, we're looking at a Goken today. The DH Goken Kotetsu Jig. Kotetsu Jig is about a guy who fucking dies and is turned into a head. I only saw Kotetsu Shin Jig. I watched it in a hospital after getting butt surgery. That anime had a fucking awesome opening song that is probably my favorite Jam Project song, which is saying a lot. But that's it. I'll be honest, I don't really care much for the Jig material I've read and watched. I believe the manga is for children, and I didn't really care for it. The company that made this, Alpha Max, gave what I assume is their first go at a Goken, and the results here are rather middling. Considering that the company has never made a Goken like this before, and for the most part makes titty figs, this is understandable. However, while that does explain it, it doesn't excuse it. And if you're wondering if I have any of those titty figs, I would like it if you didn't put them on the same level as the rest of you weeaboo degenerates. Of course I do.
That's a penis.
Also, yes, this is where that piece came from. Stop asking. That's a box. It looks really nice. This is stupid. Probably your first impressions of this are, what the fuck are those colors? Well, my boy, that is Jig. I understand that is a bit weird, but I don't mind it. I quite like the vibrant colors here, although I'm not a big fan of this blue. It looks a bit cheap to me. Design-wise, Kotetsu Jig is probably one of my least favorite Go-Nagai robots, but I still do like it. And this is much like a Future X Gouken Jig, which Future X Gouken is a line that does very nice redesigns of classic mechas, and I quite obviously really enjoy it. But unlike the actual unreleased Future X Gouken Jig, this doesn't look like complete shite. I might change my mind once there are clearer images, but I'm more than content with this being my Future X Gouken Jig, because I think that this looks fantastic. And I'm more partial to this design than the Future. I don't really like how the legs look, but much like my opinion of a Stoffel, as long as the upper half looks good, I don't really care what they have at the bottom. Well, that's actually completely untrue. I wouldn't care about this character if they had a vagina, and I just invalidated the point I was trying to make, which is fine, because the DH Gouken Panzeroid is a thing. Now my biggest problem with how this looks is gone. Oh, right. If for some reason you think that the arbitrary scores I give have any weight, they don't. 8 out of 10 for looks. Also, speaking of weight, the figure does have die cast, but is rather light.
That's so fucking annoying. Cái kia đơn giản mà hay, for real man. For real.
As you saw, aside from the strangely missing horizontal action on the waist, the range of articulation is actually quite decent. But as your bleeding ears can probably tell, the joints don't really feel very nice, which is rather unfortunate. Future Gouken here. If you look in the manual, apparently these parts are on ball joints. They're just very tight. That also looks like it might break, so, yeah, I'm not doing that. You don't get a lot, but you do get some large redesigned Jig ornaments. All these look fucking cool, and none of them look fucking stupid. As much as I like having complete sets, thank you, Alpha Max, for not including these, because I don't need this to be any more expensive. See these? They're all rather sharp, and this feels really weird to say considering what the last review was, but I'm actually starting to enjoy the pain. It's a good pain, as the fingers are articulated. The figure doesn't need optional hands, but it does come with these knuckle bomber hands, which to attach you just remove. You know what? The figure costs $300, and from this video I'm probably gonna make $3. So there's how it's supposed to work, but the figure does this fine on its own, and as you've seen, the figure has some very tight ball joints. Attach this, and these. To attach to the arm, remove, tab. The mock drills are about as long as Jig here is tall, and these look sick. The effects also look very nice, and you can take them off. Allegedly. Attach these, and one of these. Attaching to the arm works the same. Very nice. This is something I don't think that the original Jig has, unless I'm wrong about that, but who cares, it looks cool as fuck. Take these off, works the same as attaching to the arm, tab into hole. It's a bit too heavy for the boy, so you're going to need the stand. This is a very cool stand that is very modular. I personally like having it like this. Also, this stand is only included in the first release. The second release does get it. It's just this ugly gray. As you probably saw, the figure can be disassembled. This is not a bug, it's a feature. It's not just a feature, but also a characteristic of Kotetsu Jig. A lot of super robots have gimmicks, and the gimmick of Kotetsu Jig is that it is formed by combining parts that are launched out of the big shooter with Cyborg Boy Shiba Hiroshi transforming into the head. This is known as build-up. The implementation here isn't very creative. A lot of Jig figures tend to use magnets. However, it is a gimmick that I don't really care very much for, so I'm glad they didn't go the magnet route here. The mock drills here not only have LEDs for the rocket effects,
I'm
but
going
also
to use that shit for
otherwise.
sound effect, not gonna lie.
Ngày đầu tiên cô Phin đi học, sao mẹ Quỳnh khóc nhè thế? Sợ Phin lạ đồ ăn, thiếu chất, sụt
That's
cân.
scream earlier
Mẹ
enough.
Quỳnh đừng lo, đã có Optigol hộp pha sẵn tiện lợi.
I was dead sure at least one of these didn't work, because I heard that this one had some quality control problems. I think I'm lucky for once and got a good one. Oh, by the way, this uses the usual LR44s. As for the rest of these, you might have guessed they also use LR44s, which would be convenient, makes sense, and also is not how this works. So make sure you're armed, because you're gonna need to go into some dark fucking alleyway to find some obscure-ass batteries. That's amazing. To put in the batteries, take this off, raise this, there you go. A lot of you probably thought that these red parts were the eyes. Well, guess what? You're wrong, you stupid piece of shit. Okay, no. The LEDs look alright. That being said, I don't particularly care for LEDs or gimmicks on figures in general, but as LEDs don't tend to detract from the figure visually, I don't mind them. However, using LEDs for the eyes tends to remove the color, and I really don't like that. I forgot to get 2 of these, and I'm not going back to that dark fucking alleyway. So this is alright, we're moving on. Aqua, Mazinger, Mazinger, Mazinger. Overall, as much as I think this looks really cool, for the price of a fisting,
Is $300.
this should be a lot better. However, if you like how this looks, don't want to do much posing, and also don't mind the price, you can find either one secondhand, or I believe they still have the second round of pre-orders up for this. It's even cheaper than what I paid for it. What the fuck?
Alright, you can go now.
Yo. LMAO.
I don't know what the fuck you were expecting. This is just a head in a jar. Hello, hey, and dear gamers. This is Zero Goken Reviews, and I would like to reassure you to my commitment to quality. So no more silly jokes or edits. This will be a serious review channel from now on. So today we'll be looking at the McFarlane Toys Aridin Break Glass. Aridin is from the Witcher series, and this design specifically is from The Witcher 3, which is a game that I only just played last year. That's right, Dad. I'm a real gamer now. I didn't love it, but I did quite like it, especially the Blood and Wine expansion. Fine, I'll talk about Cyberpunk. Imagine fucking over your company and your workforce because you saw people really liking a game that your company made as a good reason to be incompetent. So your company didn't make The Witcher 3, your employees did, so show them some fucking respect. Anyway, speaking of PR disasters, wow, the Wild Hunt, they're so cool and mysterious. I'm looking forward to finding out what they are. Oh, they're elves. Fuck elves. I mean that figuratively because I have been conditioned to be elf racist by the media I consume. If Vermintide was about slaughtering elves, I'd be a very happy man. But I guess slaughtering furries is the next best thing. Also, you know, it's called Vermintide, so being about slaughtering elves wouldn't really make any fucking sense. Although it would undoubtedly be an improvement. However, I also mean fuck elves. Literally. Because I'm subscribed to the idea that elves are only good for looting. Thank you, hentai. It's a good thing that elves aren't real so I can say shit like this. Honestly, if they were real, I'd probably have more empathy towards them. Anyway, sculpt work here is actually really good and has a lot of little details. Paintwork is, well, considering this is a $20 figure, I guess it's acceptable. I do quite like Aridin's design, but surprisingly, despite how my favorite designs tend to involve muscles and skulls, somehow I like the designs of Immelrith and Cranberry more than Aridin's. It's probably because he's the least chunky of the three. However, I'm not really sure what's going on here, but this looks a bit more like shiny brown than silver. Well, I was going to say that, but in the game it actually isn't just silver, so it looks like this is game accurate, and it's the other figures that are wrong. I do still prefer the entirely silver look though, and I still think this looks a bit too brown. Articulation is fairly limited, which I presume is pretty standard for McFarlane figures, and I don't have much else to say.
God damn, this Shin doesn't want to get in.
You've probably noticed by now that he's holding liqueur, because here's the thing. These McFarlane figures tend to not come with any hand options, which for the ones I already had I didn't really find to be an issue, but because they want to make him able to hold his sword in either hand, you're left leaving him with one of his hands just holding air, and it really fucking bothers me. So I'm just gonna have him hold this because... fuck it. Also, being a video game villain must be pretty terrible, so I think it's fitting. I'm not gonna show you how to put the sword in his hand because
like
I barely got it myself. But something I remember from playing the game is how the end of the main game is honestly a bit disappointing. But playing the entire game with a main antagonist who is wearing really sick armor that I knew I wouldn't get, and considering all the wild hunt swords you can loot, I was really looking forward to at least getting his fucking sword, and you probably know how that went. So Witcher 3, a terrible game, 0 out of 10. This sword is cool, by the way. You tab it in, and I guess it works. Also, yes, this isn't the stand for this figure, because packaging like this is sacrilege. Fuck you, Todd. Aqua, Mazinger, Gurren Lagann, Skull Knight. Overall, at $20, this is a pretty easy recommend. If that sounds unreasonable to you, maybe look at the prices of the other stuff I've reviewed on this channel to see where I'm coming from here. This was $20, by the way.
Để trở thành tay trống chuyên nghiệp, tôi không ngại bất cứ khó khăn nào.
So fuck elves, and that's about it. Hello and hey, this is Zero Goat Reviews, and today we're looking at oh hey there, Donovan. It looks like I'm going to be giving you a bit of a workout today. You down for that? Alright. Why Hentai Action is a figure line about making articulated hentai figures. So someone is probably going to ask me about this. Let me just say, as much as I kind of like Taimanin, and as much as I think it'd be really funny to talk about this, especially with that little expansion pack they made, but what the actual fuck? Anyway, the artist behind the original illustration this is based on is Raita, who is probably best known for their design work in Valkyria Chronicles as well as Efko. But if you're well acquainted with your hentai, what you will know Raita for is the hentai series Zettai Jinpaku Mahou Shoujo, which is where this character is from. Erika is probably my favorite of the characters in Zettai Jinpaku Mahou Shoujo. Not because she's an interesting and compelling character, but because she's an interesting and compelling character. The fucking plot is exactly that. It's fucking. If you're the kind of person who feels like they need to complain about hentai plots, go and find yourself a manhole. Since I won't give a shit, you're gonna have to go get one for yourself. It's just purple, let's move on. These nipples are pointing up to the heavens where God is looking down upon humanity and frowning. Also, no, you can't cover them. They're always visible. You wanna know how I feel about it? Good. What, you thought I had shame? I do, but not for this. Anyway, the first thing that's probably gonna jump out to you is either, ooh, tits, or it's these proportions. They're surprisingly similar to my jig here, minus the wide shoulders. These are proportions that some people will despise, and personally, I wasn't really down for it. But eventually I did grow to like it. However, there are some things that I'll never grow to like. This is a bit off topic, but we're gonna talk about this anyway. I have nothing but respect for how well Leslie06 was able to faithfully recreate the original illustration. However, maybe this should have been adapted rather than faithfully recreated, or maybe this illustration should have been made to a figure to begin with. This is incredibly subjective, and I'm biased towards generally disliking these kind of poses. The logic behind them is that you're getting a full 3/4 view of both ass and titty in a single view. You might be able to do this in real life, but you do kind of have to force it. And, you know, regardless, it does look unnatural as fuck. These proportions also really don't help. For a 2D illustration, I can kind of see why you'd want this. But for a figure, if I'm looking at titty and I want to see ass, I can just do this. Speaking of ass, this ass looks like ass. And I mean that in a bad way. It really pains me to say that the ass on an Erika figure looks like ass in a bad way. But here we are, and I am very, very disappointed. I can kind of understand the reasoning, but the execution is rather unfortunate. The only way this works is if you look at her from a bit of a distance and cover her in shade. Which, why the fuck would you do that? You might also be able to notice a tad bit of a different color here, because these are different materials. So again, this is rather unfortunate. Now, I can't say I'm all that mad about this because I already have the best Erika ass I can ask for right here, but this still isn't good. And I would prefer something more like what Aqua has here, or some other option that is less awkward. This outfit, on the other hand, is like a combination of a magical girl costume and a wrestling costume, which I don't mean in a bad way, because those are both things I think are sick. So I'm pretty down for this. I would kind of prefer either her actual magical girl outfit or just something more in theme, over this one outfit that showed up in this one illustration in this one art book. But I can see why they didn't go for an actual Magical Girl outfit. Something I would kind of like from this is if you could take the skirt off. Not because I have a thing for leotards, but this also gets in the way of articulation. It does, however, make sense why this isn't a feature. See how this lines up? Now if we look at her ass, it doesn't, and I'm bothered by this a bit more than I'd expect to be. That being said, this might be surprising with all my complaints, but I actually really like this. Aside from my general affection for this character, there's just something I find really appealing about this. And not in the way you're thinking, but also conceptually. This is much like an articulated cast-off scale figure kind of thing. Let me explain. We have this, which looks like anime hair coloring, and there's this, with something closer to illustration hair coloring. You also get more gradients in the paintwork, giving it that extra bit of quality over what a Figma would have, making it a bit more similar to a scale figure. Now, of course, some people dislike this because it's articulated, which means visible segmentation. It's not particularly subtle, and I can understand why people dislike it, but I like articulation, so I don't mind this trade-off. Now, if this still all sounds good to you, there are some things that I'm sure will make this an immediate turn-off for some people. As far as buying one for yourself, that is. The figure is rather pricey, and since it's distributed by Native, it's limited, so good luck with the aftermarket. And if that's still okay with you, well, either Guts is a manlet, or these have a completely different scale. In fact, just a bit more in scale with the Space Marine, which is really fucking weird considering that this is a Primaris. But I digress. The articulation actually feels pretty okay, but the range leaves a bit to be desired. Which is the opposite of the Jeeg review, which means this is also rather unremarkable, aside from the titty articulation. This works the same as Figma, so I'm not gonna bother. You get a standard, but otherwise nice, smiling face. My personal favorite is this more expressive smiling face. A rather bland-looking, face. And I'm not sure exactly what this is, but I'm guessing it's the watching someone get fucked without a condom face, which, with how this usually goes in this hentai, I'm not sure why I should be surprised. You get 4 pairs of hands, and surprisingly, no fists. To replace the hands, you know how this works. Okay, fine, I'll say the thing. Yeah, she kinda does have yaoi hands, but so do I. So I don't care. The only rod going into these hands is going to be this. If yours happens to fit, my condolences. Anyway, just take this off and slide this in. I honestly kinda like how this looks, I think it's quite nice. So this is where the cast-off in cast-off becomes cast-off. That doesn't make any sense. Basically, you can rip her tits off and replace them with these exposed ones. I'm the kind of person that doesn't like to use the cast-off parts of the cast-off figures. You could say that's counterintuitive, but I like design things or design cohesion over just tits. But if you find how the pink looks a bit off-putting color-wise because they're covered by the transparent costume, which to be fair did take me some getting used to, or you're just horny, these look pretty alright. Much like these McFarlane figures, you get the stand thing that just plug into one of her feet, which are kind of mad but do work as you might expect.
So
I've also been using this for most of the review because she has these perplexing heels and can't really stand too well without it.
Really confusing.
Aqua, Mazinger, Erica. Overall, I do quite like this, but much like my Figma Tanya review, this is more attributed to my affection for this character than the figure itself being particularly good. However, I guess I can recommend this if you want an articulated Erica Kuramoto figure, and don't mind the scale or the price. Otherwise, no.
Và sau một hồi thì cuối cùng nó cũng chịu vào cái lồi luôn.
Hello, and hey, this is Zero Goken Reviews, and today we're looking at the new Tenga model that you're supposed to shove up your ass. I'm not really sure I get the point of this, because you can just do that with the normal Tenga. I guess the fist does give it more range, although maybe it's a texture thing. But I wouldn't know, because I spent my $300 on that Jeeg. Okay, no. Today we're looking at the Tenga Robo Mazinger Z. It just looks like a Tenga, it doesn't have the functionality. However, anything can be a cock sleeve if you're brave enough. Goddamn shipping. A Tenga is something that you put your cock into. Mazinger is a classic giant robot from the 70s. You see the problem here? Can you explain it to me? Because I don't. The first opening of Shin Mazinger is a song about fucking. This is one of the tamer things I could be talking about here in regards to Gonagai just being a goddamn legend. Actually, speaking of Shin Mazinger, it's funny that there's this, and there's also a Mazinger that transforms into a hand. But anyway, as far as being a Mazinger-themed Tenga, this looks pretty alright. Whereas the robot mode looks like something that turns into a Mazinger-themed Tenga, which is the point, so I guess this is also pretty alright. I'm pretty sure someone's gonna try to use this against me at some point. So I guess I'll elaborate on this. Because this is kind of a joke figure, the compromises from being able to transform make it look more shit. Which in this case works in its favor, because it's there, I guess.
ちょっと待ってくれ。ちょっと。どうだ？どうぞた。どうぞた。Wow. I mean, it's a banger though. Really a banger. Cái game nó flop mà. Wow. No, I say. cái game nó flop sẵn rồi mà là màu. go. Đời. Let's get the...
穏やかな海が爆音で渦巻く炎が上がる黒煙の空で死神が微笑む大地が割れる叫びまとう人々の中をかき分け俺は急ぐ迫り来る敵へ走る熱き光の嵐を抱いて戦うために飛び出せゲッター明日の希望を取り戻そうぜ強く今を生きる友の腕に星のない夜の静寂を引き裂き光が走る吹き上がるマグマ時空さえ歪めて世界が燃える怯えまとう人々の命この手で救うために許せない敵を倒せ燃ゆる命の嵐を胸に戦う時だ叫ぶぜ夢と平和を奪い返すぜただ一つ君の青い星に
Get power.
熱き怒りの嵐を抱いて戦うために飛び出せゲッター明日の希望を取り戻そうぜ強く今を生きる友の腕に潮が激しくうねる正義の風が荒れるぜゲッター俺の嵐が巻き起こる時悪の炎なんて全て消すさ
Once that thing dropped that shit out of my ass, I'm about to come.
By the way, the arms of this can't go forward. There is a constant debate about design functionality over rule of cool. So let's talk about the functionality of a Scrander on a Tenga. The Scrander on Mazinger is what allows it to fly, which means that a Tenga with a Scrander would be able to self-propel on your boy's dick. I can see a market for that. So this is functional design to a T. Someone at Good Small HQ was like, let's put a fist on a Tenga. And you know what? I respect that. Tenga stand. Tenga stand. Aqua, Mazinger, Mazinger, Mazinger. Overall, this is fine. Hello and hey, this is Zero Goken Reviews, and today I'm looking at the Frame Action Meister Govarian. Psycho Armor Govarian is an anime by Knack. Not that one. That one. I don't think they exist anymore. The extent of my knowledge of this series goes like this. It exists. For this video I did actually watch a bit of the show, and yeah, it definitely does exist. I will say the opening song fucking slaps. But there's a reason why this is obscure, and that's because the show is... it's not very good. If I had to explain why it's that, there's a bit of a pacing issue and a lack of world building, to the point where it feels like things just happen. Now, rather than an indication of quality, a lot of the time, figure prices are based on how niche they are, so this one is a bit pricey. Also, some would say Govarian is a shit name, because it sounds like ovarian. I would say that's like saying Gay King is a bad name. If you pronounce it Govarian, like a yellow boy, I think it's fine. I guess I can make the joke about how this kid's name is Puke now. Oh well, boxes. I will say Govarian doesn't look all that cool in the show. If this was anime accurate, I might not have bought it. So whoever designed this, you get both of these because you did a great fucking job. Some designs are perpetual nightmares that I could never wake from, but this looks awesome. When it comes to figures of designs that are dated in a way that looks either silly or, in this case, incredibly inconsistent, I really like it when the design is altered in a way that's a lot more appealing, while also maintaining the original feel of that design. As a testament to that, I hadn't seen the Govarian design for a while, and when I first saw this, I didn't think this was a redesign, although that might be because the original design just kinda looks like Mazinger. And yes, I know that Govarian was just someone asked Go Nagai to make Mazinger, but not Mazinger, but also still Mazinger. That's not quite what this is, and I like that about it. Anyway, sculpt work here is pretty good. There are unfortunately the usual shitty seams on this and even on the accessories, something I'm as motivated to defend as figure companies are motivated to actually do something about visually intrusive seams. Paintwork and bare plastic here don't look super high-end, but don't look cheap either. Something I don't give as much credit as I probably should is how some robot figures integrate the joints in a way that look like a functional part of the robot instead of just joints. It's a practice I very much appreciate. It's also why articulated robot figures tend to work better than people. Speaking of joints, let's talk about the articulation. And, it's fine. Start the music. Actually, these parts are unintuitive, but aside from that, the articulation for this is pretty good. So this is Govarian, and this is Obarian. Ha 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 ha. That was a pretty bad joke. I'm now going to explain the joke. So this head right here is designed by Masami Obari, who is one of the most prolific mecha designers in the business. I do like a lot of his stuff, but I don't like this, so we're not going to talk about this anymore. Also, if I'm remembering correctly, this whole thing is designed by Obari, which, if so, again, both of these. You have this immaculately detailed fist of the Psycho Crush. Okay, no, this is just a green fucking fist, and it's honestly kind of pathetic looking. I'm not even gonna bother defending it because this is a beam attack in the show, and there's no beam effect here. Yeah, fuck off. To put the sword in the sword-holding hand, you don't need to. These come already attached. I actually kinda like this. The hands don't use the awful, tiny little pieces of shit ball joints like SH Figuarts and Robot Damashis. This uses the Chad pegs that are easy to put in and easy to take off, which makes this even more convenient. You also get these Sentinel stand. Something I really appreciate from this is that it has this little thing that makes sure the figure is straight. I really like this because I don't like gay figures. Aqua, Zaku, Mazinger, Mazinger, Mazinger. Overall, I do quite like this, but generally I wouldn't recommend it, unless you really want a Govarian figure for whatever reason. But being a Sentinel figure, this is rather pricey, especially considering this is all plastic. However, this might be the only Govarian figure made in the last decade, if not more, and it's kinda nice that it's not terrible. Hello, hey, and meow. This is Zero Goken Reviews, and it's Catboy time. Because today we're looking at the Polinian Shamrock. This is made by BIDV Productions for their Robot Neanthroponi Polinian series franchise. Cinematic universe. I think it has lore, and I honestly don't know much about it. I do know that BIDV made this as a garage kit at some point, which, like, bro, please get the license for that and release a pre-painted version, because I'd very much like to have one of those. Yoko, your robot is hotter than you. I'd fuck a robot. And yes, I know there are legally dubious versions of this that you can buy, but I'd rather not. They're also garage kits. It do be a box. This is a robot Catboy, and it looks like a robot Catboy. I don't know where to go with this. Well, I do know one thing we could talk about. Unlike some figures, this has a glorious bulge.
Là một người trẻ yêu thích văn hóa truyền thống, tôi muốn trở thành một nghệ sĩ múa lân.
I don't want to play with you anymore. As I've said in a previous review, the joints and segmentation here aren't a concession on the design, but rather a faithful recreation of said design. In other words, this is a design translated to figure form with minimal compromise. The only visually intrusive seams are these on the joints and this on the head, but considering their function, I don't see any way around it. Now, the joints and segmentation are a good thing in this case. But if you're gonna make your robot person look too much like a person, I feel like you should probably just make a person. Don't get me wrong, I'd probably buy one of these, but I don't think this utilizes or is made
And there we
better
go.
by the robot part of being a
finished the
robot
main
person, and I'd
body.
probably prefer if this was a person. You do not need to agree with me, but this is just what I feel about a lot of Polinians. However, I don't feel that way about Shamrock here. He is a beautiful robot boy, and I wouldn't have it any other way. This is further reinforced by a very nice sculpt, and this is a lovely, say it with me everybody, robot ass. Something I don't really like, and this is a very minor complaint, is how these joints that I think would be better if they have these circles on both sides don't have them. Although if this
And
is
there we go.
intentional, then I guess that's fine. Speaking of joints, articulation feels a bit more inconsistent, but the range is about the same as a Figma. Except you don't get any of this. Just start. It's just the usual, except the back can come off for some reason. You get a smile, an open smile, and my personal favorite, you know how these work. And these are what you get. The last one actually is different. You have to take out the joint to put these in, and now you can arm him with his arm. I know some of you are rolling your eyes, but this actually doesn't come with anything to put in these hands, aside from the parts of the robot itself. This is probably for using accessories from other Polinians. However, I still don't know what the point of the fake joints are, though. I'm guessing this is here so you can make your other Polinians have dick, which I think is very respectable, and I approve. There is actually a difference here, though. This is a single piece, whereas the original part has separation. If this is for replacing the crotch, then I don't want to hear about it. So you saw this earlier. I don't know what that means. I'm pretty sure it has nothing to do with Wow. Getter, Aqua, Mazinger, Gurren Lagann, Shin. Overall, this is pretty alright. I can recommend it if you want a robot, catboy, femboy, and don't mind the price. Otherwise, no. Hello and hey, this is Zero Goken Reviews, and today we're looking at the Aquamarine Moe Getter 1. Moe Getter. Am I weird for owning this? Not for this, no. I didn't get Getter 2 and 3 because I'm not exactly sure why. I'm also not entirely sure why these exist. But it makes more sense than this, so I don't think I have anything to say about it. This also isn't anything new for Getter Robo. Robot Girl Z exists, which isn't a good show, but I really like that one scene where Panzeroid shows up. I wish my Panzeroid would show up. The thing about the company that made this Aquamarine is that I actually ordered one of their most recent products, which ended up getting cancelled because they're fucking dead. COVID was the camel that broke Aqua's marine, which, most tragically, nobody's picked up the bunny lart. I did end up getting one of these though. I'm gonna just hold this because I don't want to put it on the floor. Only assembly required is to shove this tail into the back hole. I don't have a problem with the decision to make this cat-like. It's not a bad idea considering the ears of the original design, although they arguably look more like bat ears, which would make sense considering future developments and other developments that we're not going to talk about. I do own a few cats, as in actual cats, this Catboy figure, and I'm not entirely sure what animal this is, but it's got cat energy, I'll say that. We can go on, but I quite like cats, so I'm not going to complain. Also, if, Batman could call himself Batman, then I think this is fine. Like, what animal has ears like this?
Mặc kệ ai nghĩ gì, tôi vẫn theo đuổi đam mê với tốc độ.
Either way, despite how the figure quality isn't all that great, I like how this looks. It's cute. This looks quite faithful to the original illustration, a concept that is lost on some. But, teach their own. Also, according to this box, this is designed by Siomaru Yasuyuki, which if I search, the first result is incest. Speaking of incest, the articulation isn't particularly good, but I guess it's functional. They could have just made this into a statue, but they didn't, and I appreciate that.
Hand it over, that thing, your ass.
These are on ball joints, and I know this might look whimsical, but I had an utterly horrible time attaching these. I genuinely hated every moment, and my life is worse off because of it. Putting that aside, I'm not particularly enthusiastic about these cat hands, but I guess they're okay. Here are the rest. These look nice and are easy to put in. Maybe a bit too easy to put in. Getter, Aqua, Mazinger, Gurren Lagann, Shin. Overall, this Getter is Moe. Hello and hey, this is Zero Goken Reviews, and today we're looking at the 1000 Toys Inui Juzo from No Gun's Life, which is a manga that was adapted into an anime that I didn't watch. Until I got this figure. I finished both seasons within 24 hours, and despite it being a bit bullshit, I did enjoy it. The show is about a noir detective who has a gun for a head, and along with Naransia and Hibiki, they occasionally investigate crimes. Sort of. It's mostly about him having a gun for a head, which isn't necessarily bad, but the show does feel like it should be a lot better than it actually is, which sounds a bit harsh, but I don't really know how else to explain it. To its credit, there are some things I do quite like about it. It's animated by Madhouse, so the animation is pretty good for the most part. Sci-fi settings where people are for some reason over-the-top cyborgs is an aesthetic I really like. The main character is voiced by Junichi Suwabe, which means that this is probably the closest I'm going to get to an articulated dandy figure. I also like how, instead of being about, what does it mean to be human? It has a theme of how people end up being taken advantage of, and driving that is the main character who doesn't want to be used as a tool. So it's actually really profound that his head is a gun that he can't fire himself. Someone needs to fire it for him, because it's not possible for him to pull the trigger. Oh. I think you get what I mean by bullshit now. It's a good theme. However, there's no part of your body you can't reach with your hands. You're gonna need to make some holes, but you can grab your internal organs. I believe in you. Although maybe his neck is too dummy thick to reach it. Okay, I don't know why he doesn't use his gun head, but he does have another trigger, which he actually can't pull himself. Until he can. Again, bullshit. There's also for some reason the usual anime bullshit, particularly with specific shots being prevalent. If you want to do this, then fine. I've reviewed hentai figures, but it really doesn't help the more serious tone your show seems to want to have. Speaking of bullshit, this box is fine. Probably the biggest reason I actually managed to watch the entire show was that Juzo is just really nice to look at, especially with Madhouse's animation. Like, I bought this without even watching the show because this design is just great. And I think they did a really good job at adapting this into figure form. The shapes, the proportions, and colors are really nice. I think this looks a lot better than the Figma, which is good because that might not ever get made at this point. Honestly, this is an amazing figure, but it feels pretty nice.
Hello and
really
welcome to the stream.
Cool. I just want to pose this chunky robot daddy. Oh, yes. A cool little detail I noticed was that his fingernails were given a glossy finish. And I guess while we're here, the joints look decent. I'm not huge on the separation for the pants, but with the articulation in mind, it's probably the best solution for this. Although some people really don't like the knees for the 1000 Toys figures. I think it's because they're a bit ugly, since they don't have a knee covering the front of the joint. Which is a fair perspective, but I don't really care. I guess it might look better if it matched the color of the legs, but painting the joints would be no less than folly, and no more than utter stupidity. The other contentious addition to the 1000 Toys figures are the cloth jackets. But first, so this is an assembly. This is disassembly. I'm not the biggest fan of cloth clothes on figures, but he does show up enough without his coat that I think it's worth having it removable. Like, it's almost always off when he fights, and he doesn't have it for most of Season 2, although you do also see him naked for a bit. I am now convinced that this is a tragic character. But yeah, I don't really have a problem with the coat. It also has wire through all the edges, which is nice. I guess I can also say that about the articulation. I really like that this mouth can open. It's actually pretty clever too. Although if you force it too far, his upper lip will eject. But otherwise, articulation is generally pretty good and feels pretty good.
Cho tôi hỏi vị trí thì đoán của Ben có chức năng có giới tính không? Nó là máy lưu trữ ADN mà tôi chịu. Gặp con xong rồi bây giờ ông bắt đầu hỏi tôi cái này đúng không?
Although for some reason his hands are only on a very limited ball joint instead of something like this, it does make it easier to replace the hands, you would think. But because these are rubber, I had to loosen them up first. So accessory section is over. That's it. You just get hands. Okay, no, this isn't a... It is a hand, but it's not his hand. It's a hand robot thing that first appears floating, and then grows feet and never floats again. But yeah, aside from these paper craft cigarettes that I'm not going to bother with, that's all you get. I can't really think of much that I'd like him to have aside from a manual. I like how his flustered head looks. It's funny looking, but it's also not a part of the show I liked. I just don't think the show is heavy enough to need this kind of comic relief, so it ends up feeling out of place. His other form would probably be a hassle to make, and would add like 5,000 yen to the price. It's not something I care much for anyway. Speaking of not caring, Sentinel, Stan, Psych, Aqua, Mazinger, Gurren Lagann, Shin. Overall, I wish Wachowski got Wachowed. I also quite like this. Although being a Sentinel priced thing means it's not an easy recommend, so we're gonna have to go for the classic. I can recommend this if you like how this looks and don't mind the price. Otherwise, no. Hello and hey, this is Zero Goku Reviews, and today I'm looking at the Nendoroid Lancer Artoria Pendragon from FGO. I guess they made this for the movie, I didn't watch it. I have read a lot of her material. It was all fan material, but I can confidently say that she's my favorite Fate girl. And she's not Saber. There's a pretty big difference. She has a lance, thus she's a lancer. I'm also going to call her Lartoria or Lart from now on. Okay, technically she is the same person, as in King Arthur, but a different aspect of their legend. She's also more mature in the other way as well, and isn't an annoying child. She's a fucking king. She exudes competence and confidence. She also looks fucking adorable. That would usually be my transition to the look segment, but this is my first experience with a Nendroid box, and how these accessories don't have a place here is kinda fucked up. But you can store them in the faceplates. No fucking clue what you're supposed to do with the stand. Anyway, looks. Sometimes I find the Nendroid aesthetic to be a bit meh, but here is thankfully one of the times I think it works really well. Actually, this is the first time I'm reviewing a Nendroid. I should probably talk about that. I think that Nendroids are probably the best example to explain the direction that the figure industry has gone. Like, since the first Nendroid in 2006, the prices have gone up. While there were some increases in quality in that time, there were also changes that should have reduced the price. So then, why? Well, there's one thing that has changed. Instead of the double digits of the last decade, now there are hundreds of Nendroids made every year. What I'm saying is the reason is not quality, but rather it's about variety. Prices have gone up to allow them to make more kinds of things and still be profitable. I'm not saying this makes their prices good and reasonable, but considering the media landscape now, it's a direction that makes a lot of sense. Anyway, I was talking out of my ass, all that could have been complete fucking bullshit. As for my personal opinion, I don't actually care much for Nendroids. I generally avoid them. This is actually the first one I've bought with a box. I just really like Lart, and this turned out very nicely. I now have a little king to go with my big king. As for the design of Lart herself, I obviously like it. And unlike the people in the comments section, I wouldn't group her with the Saber label. She doesn't just look like regular-ass Saber cosplaying. You cannot get this with these assets. Some people are also really bothered by her tits. Like, this is Fate. At this point, do you really expect decency? Although, yeah, I do like the armor. I hope that the Figma has armor parts, which this Nendroid doesn't have. As you can see from these arms, they're trying to minimize the amount the joints compromise the design. It's basically a statue with minimal articulation. But first, fisting is $300 bucks.
It's physical with your hand, but for some reason
Nhưng
it's
công nhận
it's
là
also
lên nghĩ
more
lại thì
emotional.
thấy
It's more
ông
psychological
của
too.
Ben ngu mặn thật, mà chẳng thấy Ben tìm cái đồng hồ mà không phải ông của nó. Tôi cũng không dành về Ben 10 đâu. Xong bây giờ tự nhiên mấy ông kiểu tháo lên lại.
Before we begin, either a lot of parts on this easily fucking fall off, or I might have not gotten a good copy of this. I don't have a lot of experience with Nendroids, but this older one is pretty solid, although I wouldn't be surprised if the 1532nd Nendroid has quality control issues. Anyway, something I do like about Nendroids is that pretty much all the faceplates are compatible, although it is because I assume that they're all made with the same base, which is arguably a bit shit. But either way, you get stern, yelling, and fucking adorable. So this comes attached in the box, but consistency can fuck my ass, so I'm gonna call it an accessory. Like, it's not actually attached to anything, it just sits on her shoulders getting in the way of head movement, which it does stay in place, but since her head comes off easily, it falls off for that reason instead. And it does get in the way, so you have to take it off to change her arms. Because she doesn't have articulation, she needs bent arms. This hand-on-chest one is the only fancy one she gets, despite it not being very fancy. These can go on all of the arms except for the fancy one, and I got two right-holding hands for some reason. Again, quality control issues. The arms and hands fortunately don't fall off when wielding her lance. Here's her lance. Here's her effect lance. Here's her lance effect. My Panzeroid still hasn't arrived. This is Dun Stallion. This is also an modestly articulated figure. It's also pretty cute. Nendroid stand. It's just a holy piece of plastic that keeps the figure in place. Wow. Guts, Mazinger, Ludens. Overall, she small. Price, not small. That's about it. Hello and hey, this is Zero Goken Reviews, and fuck this gay Earth. Let's talk about Ray Earth, the Sentinel Robot Ray Earth, a robot from a series that involves Japanese schoolgirls who go sparkly and nude to fight with robots in a fantasy world. In weeb words, this is a Mahou Shoujo Mecha Isekai series. Aside from the Isekai part, that sounds pretty sick. It's also a really good deconstruction of the Mahou Shoujo genre, because if you actually dissect all the elements of Mahou Shoujo and take them to their logical conclusion, you will almost definitely end up with Horror Valor Dunbine. This is just a joke, by the way. Dunbine is very different. They don't even look similar. Okay, that does look similar, but this is still a joke. They're both old isekai mecha animes, but their individual takes on a fantasy world are quite different. We'll talk about Dunbine in due time, but in Ray Earth, the fantasy world is called Saphiro, and it's very in the sense that willpower and belief can shape reality. It's also a fantasy world that really likes the Star of David. I can't enjoy it as much as someone who grew up with it, but as you can probably tell, I did watch the show. I actually watched the entire first season for this video, and I'm a grown-ass man who yelled at a kid's show for girls for not showing me robots. It took 10 episodes for one to show up, and
まだ我をまとうには十分ではない真のマジックナイトとなって目覚めた時我はまた汝の前に姿を
God damn it. There are finally robot fights at episode 19.
その通りだ愛ゆえに人は苦しまねばならん愛ゆえに人は悲しまねばならん愛ゆえに愛ゆえに愛ゆえに愛ゆえに
That being said, I'm gonna be honest and say that I actually kinda like this show. I do enjoy a good shoujo manga every now and then, so it's not really surprising. It is a kid's show, so it's not a show I could give my full attention to, but I did actually really enjoy elements of the story. Oh, and of course there's plushes of this piece of shit. Lux feels weirdly sturdy for a Rylebot, so that's good. They only made Ray Earth and not the other two, which is a shame because I like them. If this is how they were going to do it, it might have been better to just make the, you know... I'm glad they didn't because I like Ray Earth's design a lot more. I did bring up earlier about how it looks like an Aura Phantasm design, which are some of my favorite things ever. So if your robot looks like an Aura Phantasm design, then it's probably fucking great. Ray Earth is like Fire Turbine. I fucking love it. As for this figure, I do really like how this looks. This is basically just the Ray Earth design translated to figure form. They did a very good job at that, although I can see some of the comments this video is going to get already. So let's change the future and talk about why you would get this over the MODEROIDs, which for the price of this, you can get all three of them and still have some money left. Whereas for the price, this is a bit underwhelming. And even disregarding the price, there are a few issues I have with it. But other than how this is pre-painted, pre-assembled, there is a good reason to get this instead, and that's that this is an adaptation, whereas the MODEROIDs are a reinterpretation. The shapes are sharper and more robotic. Part of Ray Earth's charms for me are its shapes, which is why I don't really like the MODEROIDs. But if you do, then you should definitely get those over this. The size difference isn't that significant, and the die-cast here is quite minimal. Based on my friend's experience, the MODEROIDs are a mixed bag. Some of them are great, some of them are not so much so. So I don't know how good these are going to be, but I do know that for a Rylebot, this isn't great. And that does also mean the articulation is a bit of a mixed bag. For aforementioned reasons, the figure isn't great to handle, and the legs work in a similar way to old Reveltechs, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, like it does work, but it's just unconventional in a somewhat unintuitive way. I don't understand why they couldn't just do like the 1000 Toys figures. Like, I believe 1000 Toys is a central offshoot. Anyway.
Ah, shit. Alo, nó xước tay tôi luôn rồi này. Tôi để nó xước lấy chốt để tôi chỉnh cái motherfucking like it fucking scratched me, dog. It's fucking scratch me. Ổn. Lần đầu tiên có một con trigger hại được tôi đấy. Ở đây ạ. Shin. Yata one. これ、見てくる。ここですね。こういう、よく、It's just so cool. Now the part of the weapon as
あの獣、私たちを殺す気だ。
No shit, Hikaru Shido. You get all that you'd need, and they're convenient to attach. So I don't really have anything to say about them. Instead of attaching to the arm, it is just another arm. So when you first see him flying, if we ignore how he's T-posing, the weird thing here is that the shield is somehow in this position. Otherwise, visually, the shield is probably the most striking part of this design, and it's fucking sick. Maybe not quite as much, but this sword is also fucking sick, and can even be fucking lit.
Yo.
These fire effects so a
Welcome back
real
to
pain.
Duong.
This one doesn't stay in, and you have to use the stand because they're too heavy. Speaking of the devil, Sentinel stand. There's nothing wrong with it. Guts, Mazinger, Ludens. Overall, it's a hard recommend, but if you like how it looks, don't mind the price, and can live with the issues, I guess I can recommend it. Otherwise, no.
誰だ
Van.
みんな、当たったかな？またね。
Hello and hey, this is your Gokun Reviews, and today I'm looking at the Cheeto Serum 22 Tanio Adder. I probably completely butchered that, and this is a line by Good Small Company. Sort of like Frame Arm Girls and their unfortunate acronym, except without the unfortunate acronym, and instead of being anime girl versions of robots, this line consists of depictions of what happens when you are injected with unfiltered Cheeto dust. The Cheeto Serum makes you about 1/12 in size, and transforms you into a Huke design. If you are not familiar, they're the character designer for Black Rock Shooter and Steins Gate. I have seen a bit of Steins Gate. I like the art style, and I do like Kurisu, although I mostly just like her voice actor. Whereas for Black Rock Shooter, I'm familiar with its Hatsune Miku roots, and watching this has given me crazy nostalgia. But other than how, for some reason, I played the PSP game, I don't know much about it. I do have a few of the Figmas because I really like these designs. Similarly, the Cheeto Serum one has a pretty interesting style. I really like the design flourishes, but unsimilarly, I can't say I'm too interested by the designs themselves. Notably, one of them takes a design quirk I really dislike, which is when characters have whole segments of hair that are entirely a different color, and takes it to a whole new level. I fucking hate this. But otherwise, looking at the other ones, I'm a bit mixed. Level. I fucking hate this. But otherwise, looking at the other ones, I'm a bit mixed. These two are the one I should probably be talking about. However, I have no interest in these, so we're only going to be looking at the cats. Well, a cat. I only got one of them. Why did I get the black one? Well, it's somewhat harder to see the joints and separation, which makes it a bit better to look at. It's also fucking spooky month, idiot. Although I really hate the black cat superstition shit. Get a black cat. There's nothing wrong with them. This box is like a little armory box, which for the size of this is appropriate. You saw the title of the video. It's a cat kit. It's a very simple build, so I have nothing to say here. It's a cat. Okay, no, it's a stylized cat. Okay, fine. It's a stylized cat that's quite cute. I am a cat person, and I approve of this cat. I'm not really sure what you're supposed to infer from that. Looking at this box, maybe they're actually supposed to be like porcelain cat automatons. In other words, the segmentation might be justified. Although as much as I do like the shapes here, with the segmentation for articulation, even if it's intentional, it can be a bit rough, especially with the white one. Speaking of things being rough, and articulation, this is a tiny model kit, so it does make sense, but yeah, like most of my life decisions, this comes apart very easily. So let me preface this by saying, this comes with a head with closed eyes, and a lot of tails. These are very, very small, and are probably incredibly easy to lose, especially considering that this is black. So like it or not, the only thing we're going to talk about is the box stand. The box part of this works quite well. The stand part of this doesn't. Guts, Mazinger, Ludens. That seems pretty small. This is one of those frame armor girl style. This isn't 1/12 scale, and non-scale doesn't sound that appealing. So let's say this is 1/1 scale. But yeah, overall, sure, you can buy it. I'll give you my permission. Hello and hey, this is Zero Gauken Reviews, and Halloween is around the corner, but today, we're looking at the Alpha Max Dark Advent Kraken Dress Lania DX version. There are two versions of this kit. There's the DX version, presumably DX stands for Deluxe, which is what I have here. It comes with some additional parts, in other words, you'll be seeing Donovan later. And then there's the version that doesn't come with the additional parts. Ugh, it even sounds disgusting. It's called the STD version. Why would you buy something called the STD version? What the fuck is wrong with you? You might ask, what the fuck is wrong with me? Considering the last time I reviewed something from Alpha Max, despite how that turned out and that turned out, I've been told that for the kind of kit this is, it's actually quite good. So we'll see about that. Besides, the Dark Advent line is one I've had my eye on, for reasons. However, I did not buy the first one, because I like how this hair looks in the illustration, but I don't like how it looks on the kit itself. They are making a version with a different hairstyle that I like more, so I might pick that up. It's called the underwear version. Is that not what's already going on here? And yes, I do have the Egyptian one pre-ordered. Visually, that's probably my favorite of the ones they've made so far. Either way, this is the first one I bought, and this box is atrociously large, but understandably because this is a model kit. So let's talk about the assembly. This is the first time we're talking about a model kit. Shush. I actually had my friend build this for me, so I'll give you his footnotes. Despite having quite prominent under-boobing, the runners she came on do not feature under-gating. Also, the manual is in color. Like, genuinely, being able to easily tell which parts are which is really nice for actually putting this together. And once this is actually together, this is pretty good. It does look like a model kit, which is expected from something that's predominantly unpainted. It also feels like a model kit, although that's more relevant for later. I will say that I quite like this design. This is designed by Tong, whose artwork I am decently fond of. Although judging by their previous works and certain inclusion with this kit, I'm going to have to assume that not every aspect of this was their idea. If you are unfamiliar, Tong designed those characters in Shambro's Ultimate. They also did the character and mechanical design for Rockwind Suiho, which I know isn't as famous as Xenoblade 2, but unlike Xenoblade 2, I don't have to give fucking Nintendo money to experience it. Although I guess she is kind of a squid kid. Of course, you can take this off, and while I do think the girl underneath is well crafted, much like Giorno with Haruno hair, it feels like something is not right, as if the laws of nature have been horribly perverted, although maybe not that dramatic. For this, Haruno Shiobana's fucked up, kinda like Lovecraft, in more ways than one. I'd actually be interested in like a Lovecraftian design, but I feel like it'd be more along this line than something actually wild and interesting, so I'm okay with mechanical white gold squid. This is actually a squid, by the way. Squids have 10 tentacles. This is a squid. When you think of squids, you probably don't think about articulation, but that's what we're going to talk about now. I think it's quite similar to Kotobukiya's Megami device line in its range, but my experience with that line is quite limited, so take that with an appropriate amount of salt. Her chest also comes off pretty easily. I guess some people would say that's realistic. Actually, a lot of this comes off quite easily, and unlike a lot of these kinds of kits, The hair here is plastic rather than a more flexible material. Generally, the plastic quality here is questionable, and appropriately. This is where I question the people telling me this is quite good. I think with the context that this is their second kit ever, this is sort of acceptable, and is definitely more acceptable than the Jig. However, there are a few rather significant improvements to be made with this line, but for now...
God damn, shit is stank. Vẫn là một lơ về một nhá. The cut tomahawk is finally done. Cái phát một cái này nó cảm giác nó hơi lỏng ấy. Và yeah, it's fucking fine. Ta có thể chặt thằng Shin một thằng nào đấy rồi đấy. Cái này chặt Shin rồi đấy.
Changing the faces is actually quite easy and stay in quite well. You get 6 with one being blank. You can't attach these decals, but I can get off to this just fine. I'm definitely not just saying that because I don't want to bother attaching them. That's a lot of funny blue hands. It is a kit, so I don't see any reason not to, although quite a few of these are from the DX version. The people selling this care about these as much as I do. There's only one picture of these in the promotional images. Also, if you take these off, it looks like she's missing something. Because, you know, she is. And yeah, I'd rather have her use the mace, which is in most of the promotional images, rightfully so because this looks much better. Its function is only as a weapon, so it doesn't look weirdly forced. You can also attach the jellyfish part to this, which I think looks pretty cool attached, but unattached, I have to question how these are supposed to be jellyfish. I didn't know what these were, but even after being told, like, a jellyfish? Really? They don't have the consistency of jellyfish, but neither do these. I don't know why I used that as a segue, but I guess much like these, it was an option. However, this part does have a squishier consistency. Cool. You could see these as weird bulbous nipple extremities, but I just see them as ball joints.
Tight.
I'm very tired. I guess I somehow forgot to fix this part of the script. They actually changed them to these meat tubes, which is honestly more disturbing, but from a practicality standpoint, this is an improvement. We all need our meat tubes. I've seen the fucking analytics, I know.
It's bondage, gay website. It's all male.
You can attach the jellyfish parts here for a truly deluxe experience. Speaking of DX experiences, emphasis on the D, whoever it is at Alphamex who keeps insisting on adding phalluses to these kits, you are the finest of gentlemen and have both my gratitude and my respect. Boy, are these parts special. She doesn't just come with a cock, she comes with a multi-cock. Say with me everybody, multi-cock. It's like a cock, but it's got cock surrounding it. What an exciting feature, unlike the stand. Okay, this is alright, but why is their made in China written so obnoxiously large here? While we're on the subject of size, Guts, Mazinger, Ludens. Overall, I guess I can recommend it if you don't mind the problems and the price. Otherwise, no. Hello and hey, this is Zero Goken Reviews, and today we're looking at the Figma Slan. In other words, you get to see the first and probably last time the Donovan censorship is applied to an actual Berserk figure.
Oh shit, I'm sorry.
Slan, the God Hand's horny finger. Named the whore princess of the Uterine Sea by the Skull Knight.
Fuck you!
Actually, why isn't there a Skull Knight and Zod Figma? Making those would be a lot more sensible than the God Hand. What the fuck? Back to Slan. Those of you who are familiar with 40k lore are probably thinking about something similarly named from that universe. Yes, the reptile fuckers called the Slan, who I believe... Also, I'm pretty sure what y'all were actually thinking about was Slanesh. Which, I mean, there are some parallels, but Slan is more of a really powerful horny person than an actual god who was fucked into existence by shitty space elves. Oh, right, and Conrad, the God Hand's Pog finger, sure. Disease Man is shaped like a louse and is pretty damn thick. He's in the God Hand, so he's probably a dick. I actually don't know, he hasn't shown up much. Kinda like boxes in my reviews. I mostly talk about how the figure looks, which in this case, this looks alright. But first of all, I'm kind of okay with her not having a gooch, because I cannot confirm to you if she even has one to begin with. It's almost always either hidden or not drawn in, unless I missed something, although the movie version that this is based on does have a bush, so that's an inaccuracy. I do feel like there should also be a non-articulated version of this, considering how restrictive articulation is with this design. Was it really worth having this be articulated? I mean, I do like the option, but visually I'm left a little bit wanting, and more importantly, there aren't many options for non-articulated Slan figures. All the Art of War stuff is horribly expensive and visually questionable, where the Prime 1 statue is more appropriately priced for the size, but is nonetheless also horribly expensive. And while I do agree with how detail is increased with the size, which is something I'll talk about more in a different video, I really don't like how this looks. She looks like a bitch, which is appropriate for Slan, but I think my issue with this is more attached to the realistic take they're going for here. I'm not getting a that's a pretty good take on the design, but rather a that's a pretty good cosplay of this character, which I think is a problem I have with a lot of realistic takes on characters. So in comparison, I like how this one looks the most out of the available options, but that's evidently a low bar. It feels weird saying this right after that, but I feel this looks a bit too anime, or maybe too Figma, which for a Figma I think is fine, but more subjectively, I wish the facial features were more defined, like in the movie design that this is based on. I do think there's a middle ground here. The model in the Berserk Musou game isn't half bad. Honestly, a lot of the models in that game aren't bad either. It's just taken as a whole, the game looks like shit, which isn't too far off from how it plays. Putting that aside and putting this aside, the non-articulated Conrad looks a lot better, which isn't really what I'd want to say, but is the unfortunate truth. The paintwork here doesn't seem to be that much better, but the sculpt work doesn't look too anime or too Figma, and is not compromised by being articulated, despite the articulation being quite limited and impractical. Let me just show you what I mean by that. Much like the articulation, the accessories offer limited options. You get not horny, maybe a little horny, and big horny. You also get a selection of interchangeable hand parts to match different situations, which might sound exciting, but hold your horses, because of course it's a Figma, so it has a Figma stand. What is more exciting is a special feature Conrad has. If you put him next to your ear, you can hear the ocean. Guts, Mazinger, Ludens. Overall, it doesn't matter if this is good or not. This thing goes for at least 30k yen on Japanese sites, so good fucking luck if you want one. Hello, and hey, this is Zero Goken Reviews, and today we're looking at the Snail Shell Phantom Machine Hotaru Dual Body Set. Snail Shell makes some cool stuff, but sometimes they confuse me. Like they have this line called GN Project, which consists of anime girls with, I guess, an animal theme. So this, which should fit that perfectly, is not part of the line. You wanna know what is?
Viện dinh dưỡng y học Nutricare Hoa Kỳ phát triển thành công Colos 24 giờ Pro Plus mới, cao năng lượng 100 kcal. Đột phá với công nghệ lợi khuẩn postbiotic.
Nó chặt vãi thì cái tay nó rất là chặt nha.
Được chứng minh lâm sàng. Bé
Yeah, let's move on. This, however, is not part of GN Project. Genki Kikaku. I don't know what that is, but this is pretty cool. When a figure comes with another figure, the first instinct is to pose it as if it is a stand, but I assume this is more like a Diavolo Doppio situation. She goes from docile to, I want her to step on my dick. If you like Dark Souls, there are some interviews you should read. You might find them revealing. Anyway, this is Hotaru, and this is Hotaru Reverse, a name that is similar to Devil Reverse, except it might not be nonsense. Although this could actually be Devil Rebirth, which is still nonsensical. However, my friend told me this, so it may not be correct. Hotaru is supposedly Ying. So Hotaru Reverse is Ying reversed. I'm going to assume you get what I'm saying. If not, well, you can just look at this box. Now let's look at how the figure looks, and I gotta say, this is quite nice. Normally I'd compare it to the illustration, which I guess I'm still gonna do here, but the illustration is actually quite different. It seems at some point this was supposed to look like this, and at some point it did look like this, but they eventually changed up the concept and I cannot find an uncensored version of it. So from what I can tell, the illustrator, whose name I am incapable of comprehending, did a really good job with both designs. I do think that... Why do I keep doing this? What the fuck is this? I do think I prefer the direction they eventually went with this, aside from the dress. This one is better. The end result here also has considerably more edge. That being said, more than anything, this activates the Blackrock shooter receptors in my brain. Although, I do find this a lot more appealing than the scythe-wielding character in that series, Dead Master. And similarly, as you can probably tell, I am mostly talking about Hotaru Reverse. Because Hotaru, while also quite nice, is kind of plain and has a stupid dress. She does, however, have some funky panties. I have several structural questions, but honestly I'd rather talk more about Hotaru Reverse. I do like that this is culturally enriched with details reminiscent of classical literature, as in she perpetually has an X-ray effect that is commonly featured in such literature as hentai. However, I do wish he had more defined spinal detail, like the Nuke Matrix Fox. But still, this is pretty cool. Something else that's pretty cool is that contemporary snail shell releases have articulation in their faces. Actually, it may be a bit more visually compromised by it, but articulation is generally better than, say, a Figma. And unlike their previous endeavor, the parts don't detach too easily. This is a very good thing, because my copy of that figure actually broke because of this. Either way. Weirdly less expressive. You also get two different sets of bangs with punished variants. The back hair can be exclusively long or short. Also included is a horny variant of the long hair. Much like in real life, hands are optional. However, the options provided here are fairly standard, except for some reason the Satan hands have less holding options. Which is strange, because why would you equip non-reverse Hotaru with any of the weapons? Like, the promotional images basically confirmed this for me. Speaking of weapons... Okay, this scythe is cool and all, but who do I blame for that fucking name? By the way, I'm not done talking shit about these names, because we also have... Are you sure you don't mean whip swords? And of course, her iron halo, that is not iron, but is a halo, is called a hyper ring. Some of these names are pretty questionable. I did get them from Ami Ami, because while the names on Josie's store are better, they're also fucking liars. But with those names on Ami Ami, something that is nice is that this is just called Backpack. Although I don't know if this qualifies as one, mostly because I only have a vague idea as to what this is. Oh right, this thing. I don't really care about this, and honestly if they wanted me to care, they'd give me another one of these, because otherwise I have nowhere to put this. Well, there is, one place you can put it. The... snail shell.
Yeah. Hôm nay stream đến đây thôi. Cảm ơn mọi người đã tham gia buổi stream và yeah, we finished the Shin game con đầu tiên trên stream được hoàn thiện ngay trực tiếp trên stream. Oh my god. Em thật, em cần sẽ. Và tiếp theo thì buổi stream sau chắc là sẽ là khoảng 2 tuần nữa. Con Chokin Saber đang trên đường đến rồi. Oh my god. Every single fucking joint on this piece of shit I move is so damn. Và yep, hôm nay stream đến đây thôi và hẹn gặp lại mọi người trong khoảng 2 tuần tới. Next 2 weeks we'll just be chatting about my birthday shit. And yeah, we'll just like talking shit about figuring, talking some stuff about like just playing with the Chogokin Saber. So bye bye chat. Bye bye. Bye bye chat.